Hey, this is Jerry. My next guest is Erich Recker. I've known him since 2016, and he's a showrunner and producer. Enjoy this interview.
Agents and managers and producers, they're all kind of different yet similar. Agents are licensed, and when it comes down to the monetary standpoint, I think by law, they can only take 10% of a talent's income. They're primarily responsible for going through contracts and bookings. Manager is more about long-term goals of the talent, and they can work with the agent and the talent directly. Some talent don't have an agent and they have just a manager, and vice versa, or they have both. And then the producer is more of the hands-on actual person that actually delivers the actual project. So it's very weird. And it took me 25 years to actually truly understand that. But a lot of people don't know it. So I
Yeah.
throw it out there.
I appreciate you telling me because for many years I basically equated agent and manager. So you finally told me from a legal monetary standpoint the difference.
Well, it's interesting too, because, it's especially in this town, agents, if I were to break it down on a more specific level, and by the way, I favor everybody. It's kind of like you need all the ingredients sometimes to truly make a good cake. But you've got agencies like ICM, UTA, CAA, and again, they represent talent, be it actors, writers, producers, but it's their job to actually go out and actively try to find work for the actual talent, where
Mhm.
the manager is more, sometimes will submit directly as well to jobs for the talent, no matter who or what the talent is. But again, oversees more big picture play. And the producer, which is primarily what I do, is more about putting projects together and getting them in front of distributors, be it streamers or traditional networks. And then it even gets more confusing. Even within the producing world, you've got executive showrunners, segment producers, field producers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, it's interesting, but it's something like a vegetable soup with a lot of ingredients.
Yeah,
So
that's a great analogy. A vegetable soup with a lot of ingredients. Now, were you as a kid wanting to get into this vegetable soup community, or was it something that you fell into later?
my God, no. I'm not one of those people that said, "Oh, I have a dream. I want to be this. I want to be that." Unfortunately, when I was a kid, me personally, my whole life was about growing up and being a lawyer. I thought from the age of 8, I thought, all right, I'm going to go to law school. I want to be an international lawyer. I want to help the world. I want, all these, which is, I wish I could go back to that mindset, because when you're a kid, it's great. The world's on. But then as I got older, I started working with lawyers and law firms, and somehow literally left the Midwest and ended up in Los Angeles and found my way working in entertainment. And even then,
Wow.
I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. It just kind of worked out that way.
I
But
see.
yeah, pivoting. When I first moved out here, when I say out here, I mean Los Angeles. I ended up working at a news company, and it was just a fluke because at that time I had custody of my brother. I was in my mid 20s, and I had custody of my brother, who was only 12. And the two of us were living out here, and I had to make some decisions for him. He, at that age, had made up his mind to be an actor, and he came out here. So I was kind of helping him with his career. And like anyone, learned a lot on the fly by mistake after mistake after mistake. But you learn from your mistakes and you grow. But I was working at that time as a production assistant, I believe, at a news corporation. And I just fell into it and I truly loved it. But I loved the more development angle than the actual physical production angle. And things
Yeah.
just thought from there.
Yeah, exactly. And where in this process were you also in the military?
Oh, yeah. Before I came out to California, I was in the Marine Corps,
Oh.
um, which again, it's all about life cycles and changes and shifts. Which, by the way, every experience I've had in my life has been nothing but phenomenal, and I'm still friends with some of the guys I was with back then. But eh, yes, as a matter of fact, talk about full circle. Even being out here working in entertainment, I had done projects with the Department of Defense and the military, and I've got to meet some of the most phenomenal people. One, not to do a shameless plug, is a Vietnam War hero. He's in his mid 80s. No one really, not enough people know about him. His name's Major James Capers. He did over 50 Black Op missions. Was the first African American Marine to become a commissioned field officer in the Marine Corps. He served private details for President Nixon. If you go to capersthedoc.com, there's more information on him. But the reason I bring that up is because he was overlooked for the Medal of Honor. And now, years later, we're trying to actually see what we can do about that to get him the recognition he deserves. But as a Marine, as a human being, phenomenal person. I would blessed to call him a friend and a mentor just from the way he lives his life. He lost his son in his arms. His wife died. Both are buried in Arlington Cemetery. After the Marine Corps, he was a recon Marine in the Marine Corps. He went on to work with the CIA. Fascinating, fascinating story. But anyway, coming full circle, I think with every chapter in anyone's life, you learn from it. And you take what you've learned, I hope, and just do something else and it prepares you for the next chapter. Who knows what's tomorrow? That I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that is a great segue. So we kind of got some hints as to how you develop ideas, how you develop projects. Let's talk more about that. What starts in the inception? How do you take a project and get it to somewhere?
Well, that's a good question because I used to get frustrated when I first started because people always said, "Well, you have to know somebody. You have to know somebody," and I pride myself on being naive. I didn't know anyone, and I think sometimes when you don't know things, you actually have a better chance of success. What I mean by that is you're just not afraid. And for me, and you look at most entrepreneurs that I know, what makes them a success is determination, and they're fearless. Right or wrong, half of them will call themselves naive or stupid in the sense that they just don't know what rejection is until it happens. And I agree with that. So when I first moved out here, people said you have to know somebody, you have to know somebody. I just started reading and developing and always coming up with ideas and just researched and wrote. And it was frustrating because you do kind of need to know somebody to actually get the correct intro and done. There's no process. And it took me years to realize why and how that works. It's because of time. There's so much volume and everyone, including me, has ideas. And you think your idea is the greatest idea in the world and it's different and this, that. And after hearing tens of thousands of ideas and formats, everything else, really nothing's that original. What is original is the way it's told, the way a story is executed. And I would get frustrated. I couldn't get ahead or couldn't meet the right people. Years later, I understand. I tend to take referrals and things like that because there's just so much volume. There's not enough time in a day. And I tend to like everything. And the problem with that is you've only got so many hours and so many resources. Because with every project, in order to streamline it and get it across the finish line, it does take a proper format, development, usually tape, and things that go into it. That's where the agents and managers come in. They help, in a sense, funnel the process. So by the time it gets to the end of the funnel, it's actually airtight, and that project will have a better chance of actually going across the finish line to broadcast.
And I will personally tell an anecdote. When I first met Erich, I was working at Bytedance and we had just started our LA office. We both
Right.
were at the WeWork in Playa Vista. And I remember I loved how you went about it. You wanted some of my Bytedance colleagues to come visit you guys. And you were very gentle about it. You would sometimes, get to know us. You try to propose, hey, come to our office sometime. Like, I loved how you went about it. That's why we became friends. Like, I was like, this guy seems very genuine, but he's also passionate. He's also not afraid of no. But you weren't like pushy. You were just like, sometimes you would try to, hey, come visit our office. Like, the way you went about it was the perfect level of, hey, come on, insistence.
Well, I could make a joke about myself, self-deprecating humor here. I'm used to rejection, and it doesn't bother me. But I think the only way to truly meet people, I had got advice growing up as a kid, and it was a bit harsh. And a family member said, "People are stupid by nature." And I'm like, "Wow, what a cynical view." And then he took it to the next level. He said, "But they're mirrors of who you are." And I'm like, "Wow, that's harsh." But if you really think about it, it's true in the sense that we tend to react to what's in front of us. And my philosophy, I try to keep this philosophy is smile, be open, no matter what situation you're in. And I've been in some hostile situations, but just try to welcome them and see what happens and see where it goes from there. And I'm lucky in that it tends to always, not always, but it tends to usually work out where you can meet interesting people and relate better and more to those people if you're just willing to listen. And I
Yeah.
love meeting people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Let's talk about, a lot of people associate you with Chris Angel. How did that come about? How did you meet Chris Angel? How did you become his manager?
Well, no, I'm not his manager. I'm what they call a showrunner and producer.
Showrunner, producer. Okay.
And it's interesting because I know his manager. His manager's my other executive producer partner, and again, so the manager basically manages Chris's career, and what I do is when he does television productions, have run those productions. And what's
Oh.
interesting in that it's another interesting. I remember way back in the day, I was working on another show, and somebody called me up and said, "Hey, you got to meet this. I want you to check this guy out, this magician guy." And I had done a little bit in the space before as a producer, so I went down to his company, and I was like, "Wow, this guy's kind of interesting." And then before you knew it, at that time we were starting a show called Chris Angel Mind Freak. And you never know how a show's going to go. You just don't know. And nobody knew not enough people knew who Chris Angel was at the time. So we were lucky enough to start production in Las Vegas, and it was great. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll make fun of myself. We were total guerrilla crew in the sense that nowadays, when you're smarter and you produce more, you realize you need insurance. There's so many measures you have to go through to actually get any production truly done. Back then, we're like, this is great. Let's just get cameras and record everywhere. Kind of like the creator economy is doing right now. But we were naive and we just did it. Our days were long. We were shooting everywhere, everything we could find. And it was a very challenging show, but probably one of the most memorable and fun shows in a weird way, because the product at the end was good. It was fun. So it went from being a small order. When I say small, I think the first order was like 12 episodes, but then almost immediately before we were done, they kept increasing the orders of the episodes to the 20s and this, that. And before you know it, we'd done over 100 episodes over 6 years or 6 seasons. So, but it was fun. And I would call Chris, I've worked with quite a few, what I'll say, performers or illusionists and whatever, but Chris is different in one sense. And by the way, I have respect for every illusionist I work with, because I would say, for example, in my words, I would say Copperfield is more grand illusion. David Blaine, I'd say it's almost like endurance magic. And then you've got Chris Angel, which I would call shock magic. So Penn and Teller, I'd say comedy. So there's ways to categorize these, but at that time, it was the first time we'd ever done this, as far as bringing magic to the people of the streets. I know Blaine was doing similar things, but going for a more shock approach, and knock on wood, it worked. And I have also plenty of other shows that did not work. So you just never know. But yeah, it's enjoyable. I've had the pleasure of producing uh, maybe the most or a lot of broadcast illusions globally, probably more than anyone I know. But it's not just me, it's the team around me. And I can't stress that enough. I don't believe that anyone, when it comes to a production, should take all the credit, because it does not work that way. It took me a while to realize every single person on production is there for a reason. And no one is more important than the next person.
Yeah. How did you find your team?
That again, let's go back to the mirror analogy about people are stupid by nature, but they're a reflection of who you are. I've been doing this for a while, and I'm lucky that I can say that I work with a lot of the same people I worked with 20 years ago. And I think, like any sport or any sense of camaraderie, when you do things, it's almost like production is like war, in the sense that you're exhausted when you're done, but you get to know the people. Everyone has strong points and weak points. And over time, you realize, oh, I want to work with this person because they're good at this. They might, lack of a better term, suck at this, this, and this, but they are really good at this. So I want them on my team to do this, and then another person this and this, and even me, I've got a lot of weak points, and maybe I have some strong points. So you just try to pick your team, and hopefully you can stay with them and recognize the good, and just keep moving forward together. So I found my team literally time. Um, when I first moved to Los Angeles, and this is a very cynical thing to say, and Jerry, maybe your experience is similar. Out of every 100 people I met, I hated 98 of them for one reason or another. And I shouldn't say that, but I just, for some reason, didn't get along. However, the 2 out of the 100 more than made up for the 98 I didn't like. So over time, it took me longer, but I got to meet some of the most phenomenal friends on a personal level and a professional level than I could meet anywhere in the world. And again, I've been here a while, so the team gets bigger and stronger. So it's a filtering process.
I love what you said because right now I'm in DC and it's different, right? In a lot of places that are not LA, what ends up happening is you'll meet people and maybe like 98 out of 100 of them, you're like, okay, I could see us potentially being friends one day. That's like the average city. But in LA, it's literally like you said, 98 out of 100 people are like, but the two people that are not that 98 make up for the rest. I love how you described it. Like, that's another reason people should go to LA sometimes and just like go try to live there for a few years. Just to, it'll really help your filtering mechanism slash your patience and also your ability to be like, okay, why does this person rub me the wrong way? Maybe because I see myself in them.
To go deeper, I think that's the same with personal relationships. I can't speak for other people, but family is important. And whenever there's issues with family or work or anything, for me, 90% of the time, it's from in here. It's not from the other person. I mean, other states, I think when all of us are happy with our work or making money or doing this or doing that, it's a lot easier to overlook the annoyances in life because you're speaking from a base that's solid. So, I just remind myself of that daily. But also I think it's the same with any big city. Having spent time in large cities, I think it's a competitive vibe, but it doesn't necessarily mean negative. A lot of people say, oh, people are out for this or they're out for themselves. I approach it differently. I think people mean the best for everybody else. They just can't deliver on it. I think people overpromise, not because they're trying to con somebody, because they really want to help them, but then they realize they can't due to resources and time and everything else. So maybe the end result is the same, but I think the approach is different. Again, I tend to see things as a glass is half full.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I mean, I think that's the type of mentality I definitely had for many years. And sometimes I need to remind myself, hey, let's get back to that Jerry again. So, that's why I
It's
like talking to people like Erich. It's very inspiring.
Well, it's hard to do. I mean, period. It's hard. I mean, when you're constantly wanting something and this, it's like anything. It's like a sport. You've just got to keep pushing yourself. And I think, you know, my, I call it persistence, but people around me sometimes just say I'm too stupid to quit. So whatever you want to call it, I do believe that you should set a goal and just keep going. And I try to teach that. For example, you know my son, and he is probably one of the happiest kids I've seen. It's not that he's different than any other kid. I'm not one of those dads that say, "Oh, my kid's great." If anything, it's the opposite. I sometimes feel sorry for him because I'm probably his biggest critic, but he's always looking at things optimistically and just does it. And as a result, he fails a lot, but he succeeds even more.
Yeah. That's such a great mentality. It's like you could be one of those who never tries, and then so you can never fail, but then you could also be one of those who just tries a lot and some of it's going to stick.
That's the key. Just drive on,
Yeah.
drive on. Don't
Yeah.
stop. Drive on,
Yeah. So,
and respect people along the way.
exactly. Exactly.
But I think there are some things going on now, as you know, with the entertainment industry that's interesting with
Yeah.
AI and everything else. And you'll hear a lot of chatter on the street on how bad it is, and it is bad. The industry is changing out here. There's probably been more people out of work that have been doing this for years than ever. The studios are shrinking, but it's also, I think, an opportunity. When things shift, or if there's a time for pivoting, and there's usually opportunity in that. And I think right now with the streamers and the broadcasters, I get called every day. So what do you think about this? What do you think about that? You can't predict what tomorrow's going to bring, but I can say by taking what you've learned and where we are now, you can pivot and apply it to other platforms.
Yeah.
And at one point in time, if we go back in time, a television actor would never do, or a film actor would never do television. He thought it was below him. A television actor would never do this. Everyone was categorized in these buckets. And you would never look at a YouTube talent. You're like, oh no, I'm not touching them. They're influencers or kids or whatever. And over time, you see more film actors do television. And the performers have just kind of cross, pollinated in a sense and done all these platforms. And I think that's what's going on with the new, what we're calling the creator economy. It is getting to a point where instead of snubbing your nose up at the other category, people are learning to embrace, if they're smart, the other categories and work together and move ahead. And that's where we are now. And as you know, you came to one of our shows, our live shows, a
Yeah.
premiere. So we took what we know from television and kind of looked at, this gets boring, data. And more people, especially since COVID, are wanting up close and intimate experiences, live experiences. So I partnered with a friend of mine who happens to be a music guy, who moved out to LA around the same time I did. And he started a boy band called 98 Degrees. And his name's
Mm.
Jeff Timmons.
Jeff, yeah.
And again, it's the whole circle of life thing. It's just when we were starting in our careers, he got into music and created a very successful, multi-platinum boy band group. And I started doing television. So we decided to kind of, we've always talked and been friends, but we say, look what's going on right now. And then he said, you know what? I remember a show called MTV Unplugged where you'd see these bands in a small like living room setting. I'm like, yeah, I used to love that. And then I also like entrepreneurs, like Masterclass and things like that. So we're like, let's do something where it's MTV Unplugged meets Masterclass. So we put together this category of performers that we said we're curating the world's best storytellers and putting them into small VIP atmospheres, rooms, suites, where we're literally inviting the audience into the room to see a show. So it's like an enhanced VIP meet and greet, but instead of getting like a bad backdrop and a photograph and a meat and cheese plate, you're actually getting to enjoy a show in the performer's suite and talk to them afterwards, have drinks, exchange information, and then go. So we launched a company called Wiggle Room Entertainment, and that specializes in that. And again, it's about taking what we know. He takes his background in music and entrepreneurship, mine in television, kind of bringing talent together. So our shows are focused on illusion. We have a Michelin rated chef. It's about a cooking experience, and he's a chef to the stars. So all of his dishes are inspired by celebrities, but it's not about plugging the celebrity as much as it is about talking where the ingredients came from, how to prepare them, and why this person likes this dish. And we provide tastings. We have a really good one, an LAPD homicide detective who's a character in himself, unfiltered. We do a show called Crime Scene Live, where he talks about his department cases, everything from O.J. Simpson to the Menendez brothers to the Hillside Strangler and his personal experiences. And he introduces people to evidence. And in the second half of his show, you solve a case together. So it's about taking these, what I call entrepreneurs or storytellers. Some are celebrities. We might have an A-list performer that you recognize, but you might see a side of them that you wouldn't see on the screen, or if he's doing a big stage show. And we launched this recently, and knock on wood, but so far it's been well received. But again, it's about taking what we know and pivoting with the times. And even with that too, we are working with some influencers as well. So we're kind of taking what I'll take the entertainment pool and bringing people together and letting them do what they want to do, but putting a touch of technology and video behind it to enhance the storytelling.
And I will say only positive things about those live shows that Erich and Jeff have put together. They've been amazing, and I've been to 2 of the Mike Banachek shows.
Oh,
The one that was on the sort
yeah.
of I guess you call it like a rooftop bar type of rooftop lounge. That
Well,
one, I love that one.
well, I'm glad you said that because that was interesting. Because we in the room we are talking about, I think it's at Lowe's in Hollywood. It's
Yes.
and what's interesting is that's a room that's not really used for anything. It's a private room, but it's it's a big room, as you know, you saw, and it's got a grand piano and everything else in there. What I like about that location, we do shows there now. If you go to wiggleroomentertainment.com, you can see some things there. But basically, we try to keep our audience to 60 people to actually give it a true VIP experience. They're invited up to the suite, as you were. You go in there. We usually have a bartender, some conversation beforehand. Then a show starts right there, and it lasts about an hour and a half or so. And then afterwards, the performer comes and mingles and talks and drinks. So you're even with Banachek's show, he had a stage show in Vegas for years. It was a big stage show, but you're sitting so far back. You're like, oh wow, that's neat. What we do is we take that exact same show, change it a little bit, but put it into a room of 60 people. So you can actually interact with the performer, actually ask questions that you'd never be able to ask. And that room also, it's got a little interesting history to it. With the crime show, he can point from that room to different murders that took place because that Tayback used to walk the beat right underneath it. And the Hillside Strangler you can see, it overlooks the Magic Castle, but it's got all these locations that you can see from the room, and he points it out during his show. Also, Lady Gaga and Elton John before the Oscars used the room to practice piano and stay there. So it has a little bit of a history to it that makes the room, in a sense, is a character as well.
Yeah, that's what I love about LA. LA is a little sprawled out, so it's almost like the cool places you have to really find. And what you guys are doing really well with these live shows is you're giving people the places. Hey, these are the spots you should check out. So it's like promoting LA in a different way too.
Well, you know what? It's funny you say that because I didn't realize that LA County is over 150 miles wide. And when I first moved here, I moved here, by the way, without visiting. I had no idea what I was doing. And even to this day, as you know, there's pockets to LA. You've got downtown LA, downtown Century City, downtown Beverly Hills, downtown Santa Monica, downtown Culver City, but they're all part of this bigger umbrella, which is LA. And I've lived here quite a while, and I've probably, you know, where I live is pretty much in the middle. And I rarely go to downtown LA. I mean, I like it, but I rarely go there. There's no reason for me to go there. So there's so many pockets. Then you got Manhattan Beach, and you've got Orange County, and it's huge. And within each pocket, there are nuggets of gold. And it does take, like, I love Koreatown, I love Little Tokyo, I love all these different pockets, and they all offer something. And I lived in Hollywood for years, and I used to stare at that hotel, and I didn't to me, it was just a hotel. But after getting to know the area, after I moved out, getting to know the area, I'm like, oh wow, there are some interesting things here. And again, that's what we try to do. We try to find the beauty, find the nuggets of gold that are just kind of peppered throughout the town. And by the way, our shows are going globally actually this coming year, so which is good.
Tell me about that. What cities,
Well,
etc.
I can't jinx too much just
Okay.
because of the contracts right now, but we are looking at a couple spots in Asia. Here in the United States, I can say Florida, some ancillary markets. Like I'm from the Midwest, so of course I'm pushing the Midwest. And the idea behind it is, for example, in Vegas, and I do produce some shows in Las Vegas, but Vegas is a destination. A lot of people go to Vegas, but but it's become sports heavy, which is fine. It's entertainment heavy. It's become so big that the bottom line is the live shows aren't doing as well as they used to do. So we decided, why is that? So instead of doing a year-round residency like Banachek had at the Strat on the Strip, why don't we create residencies that are a month long, but create them around the world? So in a sense, you could put a Banachek or a great performer at one residency for a month, but then move them. So in a sense, you created 12 residencies, and you've done it to these markets that people wouldn't go to. And don't worry about the big venues. Let's focus on what we really like: small, up close, intimate. Let the performer have fun with the audience.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but we got lucky. So a lot of different markets are going. The shows they're all similar in that they're intimate and up close, but they're all different at the same time.
Yeah.
Meaning, everything from athletes to culinary experiences to celebrity driven or music. It's just, but again, they do share one thing: the format's relatively simple. It's all based around a story. So even if you might see a band that you love, and I don't work with these people, but I love the Red Hot Chili Peppers, I'm a fan. If they were to do our room, they would perform, but it would be more about, they would tell a story. Well, when we used to live together up near Griffith Park, we would blast the neighbors out, and they would tell little backstory things that you wouldn't hear, and then go on and perform a song. One of our things that Jeff and I have is we're calling it's a temp title boy band rivalry, and where we have a boy band member from the competing boy band groups, and they're together for the first time, and they tell backstories about how the media made them out to hate each other, but then that inspired this song by this group or this song by this group, and then they sing the hits together for the first time in the room. So it's just things like that. We've got a project with I love this guy. He is a 14 nominated Grammy artist named Cosign, and we have we're super excited about doing this collaboration with him. It's coming up, and I'll talk more about that later. But the idea is, if you don't know who he is, he's written hits for Justin Bieber, Rihanna. Oh gosh, the list goes Usher. The list goes on and on and on. So in his show, he'll talk a little bit about the experiences, his backstory about what led to meeting these people, the shows, and then of course there's going to be some guest appearances and everything else. But the idea is, when you leave that show, you're going to hear great music, great stories, and hopefully you're inspired to go out and do more on your own.
One little anecdote I'll tell about the live show I went to of the Bandit Chicks. I remember there was someone, I think he was just staying at the hotel, and he asked what was going on, and you invited him. And
Mhm.
that guy was so into the show. You could tell like he'd never had that experience where the magician was right in front of him, the illusionist was right in front of him. And like he was so into it, he was volunteering for everything. He was reacting like that's the type of experience that you
Well,
get at these live shows.
I'm glad you said that, because that goes back to one thing too, and I do that a lot, where I'll be walking around and I'll see somebody, and if I have the ability to invite them to an experience they've never done, how fun is that? When you travel, isn't it great to meet somebody randomly? And this happened to me in Tokyo. I ran into some people one night, super nice. I ended up following them around for the night, and I saw and did some of the best things in my life. Never planned it, never would have expected it. And hopefully that person, I didn't see, I've invited the person, but I was too busy. I didn't watch any reactions, but I'm glad that you saw that, because I like it when people have fun. Unexpected surprises are big. And even with Banachek's story, for those that don't know, he's got a great backstory. There was a story, a project called Project Alpha years ago, where the government did all this testing, trying to find a real psychic. And after 4 years of testing, they said he was a real psychic. And he said, guys, I just spent 4 years fooling you to thinking I'm a psychic. I'm not a psychic. And he turned down a big check because he passed all these tests. He's like, no, so he spent his career debunking psychics, or people that claim to have supernatural power. And that's what's interesting about his show. As you were there, he tells the story of that, but he does some of the, I guess we can call illusions that fooled scientists, the world's top scientists. And what I love about him, he'll say, there's no such thing as a psychic. You can't make predictions. But then he'll turn around and predict the winning lottery numbers. And I'm like, wait a minute. Even I, who have been around all this stuff a lot, I'm always blown away by people like, oh, this doesn't exist, yet they do something you can't explain. And that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So what's the next show that you have planned? What's the next event?
Well, this weekend, I mean, which this will be after probably that this is out, but we are doing a series of shows, Crime Scene Live at that location you had mentioned at Lowe's Hotel Hollywood. We have the Crime Scene Live with Don Tabak. That's the homicide show I told you about. We have, oh, I'm very excited about this one, a show called Journal of Mystery. And it's about this performer, true story again, all story based, named Rich Manley. That's his real name, Rich C. Manley. Um, if you look him up, he's got a great following. But his true story is interesting. His grandfather was a surgeon and a traveler, and his grandfather traveled the world looking for alternative medicine. And he was also an up close hand magician, or up close magician, and he did that for his fingers, dexterity for surgery. Well, he traveled the world, experienced all these cultures. When he passed, he left his journal to his grandson, Rich. Rich has spent his whole life retracing his grandfather's footsteps. So he's been on all 7 continents. He's like a Bear Grylls type guy. He does extreme rock climbing, kayaking, blackwater rafting, et cetera, et cetera. His show was called Journal of Mystery. It's about his world travels and some of the illusions he picked up along the way based on cultures. So that's coming up. We have a psychic. It's called Beyond the Veil with Kristen Lambert. She's not a psychic, but she just does some things that really gets into your head, which is fun. We've got, it's called the Sunset Tasting Room. And that's the one where we have a Michelin rated chef, great personality. I compare him to the soup Nazi from Seinfeld. Very hardcore. It's like, you're going to eat his way or you're not going to eat. But he talks about the people he's worked with. He was a personal chef for Seal and a lot of other performers along the way. And he shows you the story behind the dishes, and he gives tastings. I'm excited about that one. So there's good stuff coming up, but on the immediate docket is Crime Scene Live. And for those crime buffs out there, Don's a character. I highly recommend you go out and check that out.
Yeah, I just love the fact that these shows have a story element to them. I love it. So it's not just a bunch of skits or a bunch of things. It's like, no, there's a journey within the narrative of the show itself. I love that.
Well, and we talked earlier about what makes an idea different. And I like, everyone has an idea, everyone has a story, but I think it's how you execute the idea. And don't get me wrong, I always want to change things. I always want to make the experience better. One thing we're working on, if anyone's listening, please contact me. In Don's show, The Crime Scene Live, I'm working on creating an interactive experience, either using augmented reality glasses or something, where we're going to take you into a real crime scene. Like, already we have it, it's interactive where you solve a crime, but I want to up the ante. I want people to feel what it's like when you actually walk into the room, but not to the point where it takes away from the whole experience. But just when we go into that crime scene, I want everyone to see what Don sees and then take away what they can take away from that. So we're always changing and updating the formats, but that's what makes it fun. And oh, there's one more twist going back to Crime Scene Live. And this was inspired by a documentary called Don't F with Cats on Netflix. I thought it was fascinating how a group of online people got involved to solve a crime. Well, Don recently came out of retirement and solved a missing kids case in South Carolina, and he talks about it. So at the end of his show, we're going to try to get the audience involved and solve a cold case as well with Don's supervision, but we want the audience to do it with us. We want the viewers to log on, give their 2 cents. And it goes back to working with a team. It doesn't matter if that detective is an experienced 25-year homicide detective or somebody off the street. Yes, you have to filter information, but it's a small world. And I think, people together can get a lot more done than not working together.
Yeah. The equivalent I like to use as someone that's made content for many years is, for example, in the comment section of YouTube videos or on Reddit or on any social media platform, people in the audience will be trying to dig through things, right? So like you could not even have an intended mystery. Like look at that little my screen back here isn't covering up the window all the way, right? So like somebody will be like, okay, what's behind there? And then that will lead to a lot of sleuthing. So imagine doing that, but like with actual cases and stuff like that.
Well, and I agree with you. And one thing that surprised me, which I didn't know, there's the audience. I always would have thought it would be like young men that really dive into crime. What's interesting, it's mostly women that the crime space appeals to. And it scares me now because women are really into crime. But I'm going to wake up, look at my wife one day, she'll have a knife in her hand. But no, I'm kidding. It's but it is fascinating that the crime genre attracts everybody. And that's something I just recently learned. So, but even with that, I've got to meet some of the best people, because when I was working with Don years ago and I met Don, this goes back on how we come up with ideas. I met Don because I was trying to produce something for one of the networks in the crime space. And the buyer at that time said, "Can you solve it? Can you solve it?" Well, I'm a TV producer. I can't solve anything. Then Don said, a case was brought to my attention. We're going to do it. So as a whim, we just flew to South Carolina and we got really involved in it. And we did help solve this case. And it inspired me, meeting these people that are affected by murder. It's not just the person that dies. It's just all the people around them and how long they're affected. And it changed my perspective on crime. Basically, it's not just about. I mean, the person that dies, unfortunately and fortunately, is over. It doesn't carry on. It's the ones around them that it truly affects for years and years, if not a lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just great that you're thinking about how to adapt in this current landscape. As you were saying in the very beginning, things are changing a lot. So it's like, how can you incorporate? You're thinking about incorporating the VR and the AR and stuff like that. You're really thinking about, okay, how can we adopt the latest technology, the latest trends? Because things will change. So you either ride the wave or you don't, right?
Well, exactly. But I think it's good. I think it's good. I mean, people renovate their houses after a while. People, you change your hairstyle. You just good or bad. Another childhood philosophy: move. It doesn't matter in life if you're going up or down. Just keep moving. And the philosophy is, when you are going down, you learn and you can pivot and go back up. If you are going up, you can pivot. If you're just sitting still, you're a target and nothing good is going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
So true. So true. So shall we talk a little bit about the cosign? The
well, look, we can talk forever, but I
Mhm,
just feel I don't know what. Again, I don't use, and you know this about me. I
mhm,
never talk. I never give interviews because
mhm,
I'm always so worried about the other person and what they
mhm.
want to hear. So if you want to hear cosign, I'll tell you how I met cosign.
Yeah, sure.
Because
Let's do it.
again, this is the perfect example of how
Mhm,
life just if you're open, ready to embrace new experiences, it's just great. So at one of the shows, um, I don't know if this was the one that you were at or not, but somebody, and I won't call them out. I don't know this person, but they might have had a little too much to drink. So I walked them down to the lobby nicely. It wasn't a bad thing. I just want to make sure everyone was safe. And while I was down there, somebody was sitting in the lobby, and they made a comment about the people leaving, and I said I can't make fun of them because who knows, that was probably me at some point in time. So, and we just started talking, and this gentleman was so nice, and we just hit it off. Well, it ends up he was waiting for he's a producer and he was waiting for his client, or a manager, and he's waiting for his client cosign, who I didn't know at the time. And we came up and we started talking. I was just fascinated because he's from Chicago. I'm from the Midwest. We started talking about our background, this, that. And then I brought him back up to the room, to the show, which he was going to anyway. He had heard about it. So I was like, all right, yes, come on up. And that's one thing I got to stress again. You never know who's going to show up at these shows. They're designed to be VIP audience, intimate, but welcome to everybody. So we go up there, and after the show, we were talking a little bit more. And he goes over and sits down on the piano, and I sat with him. He starts playing a song, but he was good. I'm like, oh wow, you're pretty good. And then the guy came over and said, oh yeah, that's cosign. He's got 14. I said, wait a minute, I know who he is. This is him. And they're like, yeah, and that's how we met. It was literally just circumstance. And then when we started talking, we were talking about storytelling, our vision, his vision. He wants to help people. He's Columbia grad, and his backstory is fascinating backstory. He was raised by a single mom. His father was an Olympian. His mom died, passed while, before he graduated, of cancer. And I just love the backstory. We talked about how he ended up working with Justin Bieber and all these other people. And I was like, let's do something about this. And then that's how we started collaborating, and everything just kind of takes up from there. But it comes down to being ready to listen, and then you never know what you're going to get, and this happened quite a few times. I was in Florida, and this is years ago, and I was at a hotel lobby bar, and I saw a group of older women, I'd say in their 70s, but they were the loudest, most obnoxious group of women I'd ever seen. They're saying that they're doing shots of liquor, screaming and yelling. I went over and I introduced myself, and they were just this is before me too. I mean, they were crazy the other way, and I had a blast with them. And I found out they were retired policemen, and they all lived in the same community, and they still get together to drink and talk about crime in the neighborhood and fight crime. And I was like, what a great story. You guys are the Vigi Grannies. And we developed the concept around them. It didn't really go anywhere, but I met these great people, great backstory. It's not forced reality. It's authentic. And to me, that's what's, going back to the entertainment business or storytelling, it's about the authenticity. So if you can find someone that really lives a story and it's a good story, you don't have to fabricate it. It is true that the reality is stranger than fiction, and there's so many stories when you meet people, and I'm just willing to listen and embrace them should they happen.
being in the DC area right now, it's funny that you associate these stories with, oh, this is like such a more LA type of thing. But I'll tell a story that's very similar. So, one of my neighbors, bless them, they host a carnival everywhere just to bring the community together. And so I went because this is the first time ever in like 10, 15 years I'm here for the summer. And so I went there, and this is the DC area. So you're not going to meet entertainment people, but random people who came to the carnival, like they've worked in the Senate or they've worked in
Mhm.
other places in the US government. So like this type of mentality of being open to people's stories, listening, meeting people, it happens in whatever industry you are. So I'm telling this story to let people know embrace this type of, okay, I'm going to put myself out there a little bit and meet some people, listen to their stories, because whatever industry you are, you might meet some really cool people that it might develop into something. Like there is a guy, he's a neighbor of mine, but he used to be the head caterer for this 100 senators in our country. Like that's some cool stuff, right? That could lead to something. Like I could develop a story with him. I could, like that's what I mean. Like no matter what industry you are, you go to some events and you could meet someone interesting and you guys could potentially have a life-changing friendship or a life-changing collab or whatever.
You know what? You're so right. And that's exactly it. I think it's about just embracing what's out there. I think having an ego, to a point, an ego is good. I think you got to have confidence. You got to have this, you got that, but you can't let things get out of control. I know people that turn their nose up to things. Oh, I won't do that because of this, or I won't do that because of this. And it's foolish. Just embrace it. I don't care what you're doing. Forget about, we all put our pants on the same way. Well, most of us. And we're all cut from the same cloth. So let's just not forget who we are. Yes, you can excel at certain things. Yes, you might be better at certain things. You might be gifted in certain areas, but that's great. That's just the icing on the cake. But we're all the same cake. And let's not lose track of that. Uh, I try to teach that to my son and everyone around me. Just embrace where you are and good things will happen. And you can always leave it and come back to it and go. So some people say it's a naive approach. I don't really think it's naive. I think it's it can work if you give it a chance. Just try it.
So this is the last question, and it involves the backdrop. So tell me about all those Telly Awards back there. What? Well, first of all,
Oh,
to viewers who don't know what the Telly Awards are, what are those?
yeah, I don't know what to do with it. I'm sorry. I should turn the camera the other way, but literally this is my home office, and the other angle's a mess. So it's like over time when you do this so long, and it's funny because I really really mean this. It's going to sound like a contradiction. I'm kind of anti-award in the sense that I don't need awards. When I do things, I don't do it for awards. I really really don't. But I've been blessed that certain programs I've done have been recognized and won awards, and those are some of the awards. And I don't even know. I'm sure they're all diverse. I think there's everything from probably just there's a lot of them around, but it's everything from probably Chris Angel, Mind Freak, or this or that. But I think they're recognized for different things. One might be cinematography, one might be, executive producer, one might be, they're all different. So you do get recognized for different things. But out of all the projects, it's funny because of course I'm proud of it. I've worked on, with Dr. Phil, I've done a lot, but some of the more memorable ones are the ones that don't get the recognition. And I'm going back to that military hero, Major James Capers. There's a doc I did. Um, it was called The Legend of Team Broadminded. Didn't get that much recognition, but that was one of my most pieces I'm proud of, just because the story. Now, the production and everything else, of course, we could do better and do bigger, but it's because it's based on such a good and real hero. I'm more proud of that. And that might have an award too, but I don't know. But the point is, different shows and different projects, I think everyone likes something different about it. I like, I do a lot of live stunts and things like that. I like that because it's an adrenaline rush. I love illusion because you're altering people's perception of reality, and that's fun. And I think that's why people used to go to movies and everything, is to have that sense of escape. So I think when you can take something real and give it, make it surreal, and that's why I like illusion and stunt. I started in news and I left news. I did game shows and everything else. And now that I'm, getting older, there are elements of news that I like, so it's just, it changes, but it's about embracing the change. So,
Yeah. Two things that really resonated with me. One is some of my most proudest contents also is like the stuff that doesn't get recognized. But
mm,
if you're like, okay, Jerry, show me one that you're proud of, I'll show you a video that's only gotten 10,000 views. Right? It's like some of the videos, I remember one of my videos that it before I made it private, it was probably at like 8 or 10 million views. It was like I recorded with a friend on the fly in like 15 minutes and the audio wasn't even good and nothing. But like It was the one that got that many views. Then there's ones where like, I'm really proud of the editing. I'm really proud of the storytelling. And it's like 10,000 views. So that's one of the things, if you're a storyteller in general, in life in general, whatever you, there's just sometimes things that you're really proud of. It's not going to resonate as much with other people. So that's like one thing that resonated with me.
You're right.
Yeah.
And I can't stress that enough. I'm even in the world of illusion. I might work with somebody that does something what I call so small, but gets a huge reaction. And there's other things we might do, like larger stunts, where I think, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to be amazing. And you're like, you get the hand clap. I'm like, wow, I could have made my life easier by just doing the small thing. You just don't know, and that, going back to the industry in general, I think that's what makes the process frustrating, because creatives at the distributors, you used to be able to walk into a room and you could get a green light from one key decision maker. Now everything's become so corporate and data driven. There's less chances being taken, and I like taking chances. And but it is a business, so you can only take so many chances. So
yeah. The second point, it involves the taking chances too thing, is that my first full-time job out of college was also in news. So recently I've had that same realization you had. I've been trying to cater some of my content that I create on my big channel in a more like news fashion. And it's like a realization. My philosophy behind that slight tweak is, well, what's worked so many years before content creators came along? Well, it's that way of how journalists doing news tell a story. And I'm like, that just because now everything's on here doesn't mean that way of storytelling is dead. So why
right.
not bring it back? So that's why I've embraced all the news training I've had back in the day. So yeah, it's funny that we are going full circle too. I've been really I'm sure you know this word, a VOSOT, right? Voiceover sound on tape. I've been trying to adopt a VOSOT model in some of my videos. So now it's not just me narrating, I'm always going to have an expert opinion, always. And it's like, it's made me more proud of my work. And it's also, I think it's resonated with my audience. They're like, oh, I like that you incorporate an interview with an expert.
It's funny because, again, it's going back to, you talked about news, and I don't remember where I heard this story, but it stuck with me. It's a story about a South African farmer, and wealthy South African farmer, and he had heard they were finding diamonds elsewhere in Africa, and he sold off all his land. He divided into small chunks of land, and he sold it off. And he spent his whole life traveling Africa looking for diamonds with that money. Well, one day, a poor farmer who bought a small trunket of land from this landowner was out, and he found a rock. And he's like, oh, this is interesting. What is it? And that rock ended up becoming the Hope Diamond, the largest diamond ever found at the time. And the moral of the story is, this guy had diamonds in his backyard all along, but he kept hearing, I got to go here, I got to go here, I got to go there. So he spent his life chasing the diamonds. And I think there's the lesson to be learned is, I think we all have diamonds in our yard. Let's look at what we have and make it shine versus always looking elsewhere.
Throughout this interview, Erich has talked a lot of stories, told a lot of stories.
Sorry.
That have so much, it's great. So much meaning, right? I can tell your years of being a storyteller, whether this came naturally, this is something that kind of developed. Like, I know why you're doing what you do. Like, the stories you tell have so much meaning. Like, they get you to think, and it's such a great thing you have.
In other words, I'm old. That's what it comes down to. And I'll gladly poke fun of myself. But again, I could tell stories forever of life happenings of when I was young, about this, about that. I'm still here to tell them. So they must have somewhat happy endings. So, and again, I'm not like a hoorah, life is hard. Work is hard. But try to find pleasure in everything we do, and it makes it more enjoyable. So.
Yeah. Is your brother still an actor?
I have a lot of brothers, and they're all. I won't go to my personal life too much, but let's just say my father liked making boys. So there's a lot of us, and we're all dispersed pretty much around the United States right now, and we're all different. Some are involved in the tech industry, some are in the medical field, some are in the law field, and some are in entertainment. So, yeah, it's interesting. So the brother you're referring to is probably my. I always feel bad. I want to talk about other people, but the brother referring to, his first name's Matt, and we all have kind of different last names. So, but he I don't know, is he still in the entertainment? He went from being in front of the camera to doing set design, to doing other things. So I think he's taking his knowledge that he learned over the years and applying it to other things. And he's always been in the healthy living space. So I think he's gone back to his roots and actually taking what he learned in entertainment and applying it toward healthy living and sharing that information and knowledge. And again, you know, people say, even with my son, they're like, who you've met, they say, oh, are you forcing him into entertainment? And I'm like, absolutely not. He goes by his real name, but he doesn't use his last name. And I want him to learn life, just be presented to things that, and then decide. And I think the more you're exposed to, be it languages, cultures, I can't stress how much travel is important. Don't think that, don't be naive and think that your base is the best base in the world. I don't care where it is. I don't care if it's here in LA. I don't care this, that. There's always things out there that are worth exploring, and be open to the travel. And that's one thing I do like about cultures like LA and this, that. It's just people are from everywhere. And it's so important to learn from these cultures and do more. I love travel.
Yeah. Right before I left LA, I took a trip to Florida to help with a fight show. And it was the same thing. I've never been to South Florida. And
Yeah.
South Florida was so amazingly diverse in a different way. Like I met Haitians, I met Puerto Ricans, I met Cubans. These are groups of people I've never met before. And I was like, wow, even within America, there's places that are different. And I thought I had everything in LA. And I'm like, wow, there's places that you'll meet different types of people that you don't get to meet in LA. So again, I second what Erich says. Gotta travel. You know, don't like wear yourself out traveling, but once in a while you gotta travel and make sure to travel and interact with the people.
It's a beautiful thing, you know, and embrace it. Travel. You don't have to love everything. Look at green eggs and ham. The old kid story. Try the green eggs every once in a while. You know, you might like it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, Erich, why don't we do this whenever you have another big project or something, let's just do more talks.
Yeah,
So let's
absolutely.
make these talks ongoing. Again, you have a sense of humor. I'm telling you, like you have so much to offer just with these interviews. I want to encourage you to do more.
I'm going to be very honest with you because I always am with you.
Uh-huh.
I hate talking about things, but I'm just glad you listened. And I don't want to bore anybody. And so it's just, but I'm always here and I'll always answer anything. And like I said, I welcome conversation. I just feel like if there's something you want to know, you just call me and I'll answer it. But, you know, I usually say no to things like this just because I always feel like I could recommend so many other people that I feel are much more dynamic and energetic, but we all have a story. So
Yeah, exactly. And the offer's there too. Anyone who wants to talk to me, please send them my way. I would love to. I know I've been meaning to interview Mike Banachek. So like that offer still that I would love to interview him soon. And yeah, anyone that you want me to interview, I'm down.
okay. Well, I'll give you a list of people who love talking and they are interesting. So anyway, listen, thanks, Jared, for the time. You know, have a great day. Enjoy DC.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
haven't been there in a while. When I was a kid, I used to go there a lot and I loved it. You know, there's again, people forget these pockets around the United States. Every city is different. Then within the city, there's nuggets. So explore.
Yeah, I will. And please, if you're ever in DC, let me know. We'll explore together.
Sounds good. All right, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Talk to you soon.